Ever wondered how far the Vikings really went? Beyond the icy seas and rugged coasts of Greenland lies the legendary Vinland, an untamed land that Norse explorers reached over 1,000 years ago. Today, we'll explore the true story behind the Vinland Sagas, diving into the adventures of Leif Eriksson and his crew as they journeyed to the shores of North America. This isn't just about discovery, it's about the grit, determination, and sheer curiosity that drove these explorers to venture into the unknown. To truly grasp the origins of the Vinland Saga, we first need to delve into its roots. The anime takes its cue from two historical Icelandic texts, collectively known as the Vinland Sagas, the Saga of the Greenlanders and the Saga of Eric the Red. These sagas, penned between 1220 and 1280 AD, recount events that took place roughly between 970 and 1030 AD, offering varying narratives of the Norse expeditions to Vinland. As depicted in the anime, Vinland, which translates to Wineland, owes its name to Leif Eriksson's discovery of grapevines in North America. This mysterious land is now believed to correspond to what we recognize today as Eastern Canada. In fact, the Viking ruins unearthed at Lonso Meadows are often thought to have been constructed by Leif and Thorfinn during their adventures. The Vinland Sagas provide us with the most comprehensive and reliable accounts of Norse exploration in the Americas, and it's from these very texts that the anime draws its inspiration, shaping its characters and storylines. But what really happened? Chapter 1. Saga of the Greenlanders. In the Saga of the Greenlanders, Bjarni Herjolfsson inadvertently discovered new lands while journeying from Norway to visit his father during the second year of Eric the Red's Greenland settlement, around 986. After finally reaching Greenland and landing at Herjolfsnes, where his father's farm was located, Bjarni stayed there for the remainder of his father's life. It wasn't until around 1000 CE that he returned to Norway, where he recounted his discovery to his overlord, Earl Eric. Bjarni was criticized for the long delay in reporting his find. Upon returning to Greenland, Bjarni shared his story, which inspired Leif Eriksson to organize an expedition that retraced Bjarni's route in reverse. The journey passed by a land of flat stones and a land covered in forests. After sailing for another 2 days across open sea, the expedition discovered a headland with an island just off the coast, near a pool accessible to ships at high tide in a shallow sea with sandbanks. Here, the explorers established a base, which is plausibly connected to Lonso Meadows, although the winter was described as mild rather than freezing. One day, an old family servant named Turka went missing and was later found muttering to himself. He eventually explained that he had found grapes, or currants. In the spring, Leif returned to Greenland with a ship full of timber and towed a boat filled with grapes or currants. On the way back, he spotted another ship stranded on the rocks, rescued the crew, and later salvaged the cargo. A second expedition, led by Leif's brother Thorvald with about 40 men, set out in the autumn after Leif's return and spent 3 winters at the new base, known as Leifsbudir. During the first summer, they explored the west coast of the new land, and during the second summer they explored the east coast, where they ran aground and lost the ship's keel on a headland they named Keel Point. Further south, at a site where Thorvald intended to establish a settlement, the Greenlanders encountered some of the local inhabitants, referred to as Skraeling, and killed them. This led to an attack by a large force of locals in hide boats, during which Thorvald was fatally wounded by an arrow. After the exploration party returned to base, the Greenlanders decided to return home the following spring. Leif's brother Thorstein, who had married Gudrid, the widow of the captain rescued by Leif, led a third expedition to retrieve Thorvald's body. However, they were blown off course and spent the entire summer sailing the Atlantic. After wintering as guests at a farm in Greenland with Gudrid, Thorstein fell ill and died, but not before briefly reviving to make a prophecy about Gudrid's future as a Christian. The following winter, Gudrid married Thorfinn Karlsefni, an Icelander, who agreed to lead a major expedition to Vinland, bringing livestock along. Upon arrival, they found a beached whale, which sustained them until spring. That summer, they were visited by local inhabitants who were initially frightened by the Greenlander's bull, but were eager to trade goods. In the autumn, Gudrid gave birth to a son named Snorri. Shortly afterward, one of the locals attempted to steal a weapon and was killed, leading to an attack by the locals. The explorers survived with only minor injuries by retreating to a well-chosen defensive position a short distance from their base. The explorers returned to Greenland in the summer, bringing back a cargo of grapes or currants and hides. Shortly thereafter, a ship captained by 2 Icelanders arrived in Greenland, and Freydis, the daughter of Eric the Red, persuaded them to join her in an expedition to Vinland. Upon arrival, the brothers stored their belongings in Leif Eriksson's houses, which angered Freydis, leading her to banish them. During the winter, Freydis visited the brothers and requested their ship, claiming she wished to return to Greenland. The brothers agreed, but Freydis returned to her husband with a completely different story, which resulted in the killing of all the Icelanders, including 5 women, as they slept. In the spring, the Greenlanders returned home with a valuable cargo, but Leif eventually learned the truth about the Icelanders' fate. This marked the last Vinland expedition recorded in the saga. Chapter 2: Saga of Eric the Red. In the other version of the story, the Saga of Eric the Red, it is Leif Eriksson who accidentally discovers new lands while traveling from Norway back to Greenland after a visit to his overlord, King Olaf, who had commissioned him to spread Christianity in the colony. On his return to Greenland, Leif brought samples of grapes or currants, wheat and timber, and also rescued survivors from a shipwreck, earning a reputation for good fortune. His religious mission was a swift success. The following spring, Leif's brother Thorstein led an expedition to the new land, but he drifted off course and spent the entire summer sailing the Atlantic. When he returned, he met and married Gudrid, a survivor from a ship that had made land at Herjolfsnes after a difficult voyage from Iceland. Thorstein and Gudrid spent the winter as guests at a farm in Greenland, but Thorstein died of disease, reviving just long enough to make a prophecy about Gudrid's future as a far-traveling Christian. The next winter, Gudrid married Thorfinn Karlsefni, a visiting Icelander who, along with his business partner, Snorri Thorbrandsson, agreed to lead a major expedition to the new land, bringing livestock with them. The group sailed past landscapes of flat stones and forests, rounded a cape where they saw the keel of a boat, and then continued past some extraordinarily long beaches before landing and sending out 2 scouts to explore inland. After 3 days, the scouts returned with samples of grapes or currants and wheat. The expedition sailed a bit farther before landing at an inlet near an area of strong currents, with an island just offshore where they made camp. The winter months were harsh, with food in short supply. One day, an old family servant named Thorvald the Hunter, who had not converted to Christianity, went missing and was later found mumbling to himself. Soon after, a beached whale was discovered, which Thorvald claimed was provided in response to his praise of the pagan gods. However, eating the whale made the explorers ill, so they prayed to the Christian god, and the weather soon improved. When spring arrived, Thorvald wanted to sail north around Kjalarnes to seek Vinland, while Thorfinn preferred to sail south along the east coast. Thorvald set out with only 9 men, but his vessel was swept out to sea by contrary winds, and he and his crew never returned. Thorfinn and Snorri, accompanied by Freydis, sailed south along the east coast with 40 men or more and established a settlement on the shore of a seaside lake protected by barrier islands and connected to the open ocean by a river navigable by ships only at high tide. This settlement, known as Hop, was in a land abundant with grapes or currants and wheat. The saga is unclear whether the explorers remained there over the next winter, which was reportedly very mild, or for only a few weeks of summer. One morning, they saw 9 hide boats, and the local inhabitants examined the Norse ships before departing peacefully. Later, a much larger flotilla of boats arrived and trade began, although Karlsefni prohibited the sale of weapons. One day, the local traders were frightened by the sudden appearance of the Greenlander's bull and stayed away for 3 weeks. When they returned, they attacked in force, but the explorers survived with only minor injuries by retreating inland to a defensive position a short distance from their camp. Freydis, slowed down by pregnancy, picked up the sword of a fallen companion and brandished it against her bare breast, frightening the attackers into retreat. The explorers subsequently abandoned the southern camp and sailed back to Straumsfjord, killing 5 natives they encountered on the way, who were lying asleep in hide sacks. Karlsefni, accompanied by Thorvald Eriksson and others, then sailed around Kjalarnes and continued southward, keeping land on their left side, hoping to find Thorhall. After a long voyage, they moored on the south side of a west-flowing river, where they were attacked by a one-footed man, resulting in Thorvald's death from an arrow wound. Upon reaching Markland, the explorers encountered 5 natives, 2 of whom they kidnapped, baptized, and taught their own language. The group eventually returned to Straumsfjord, but disagreements during the following winter led to the abandonment of the venture. On the way back to Greenland, the ship of Bjarni the Icelander was swept into the Sea of Worms, where marine worms destroyed the hull, and only those who escaped in the ship's worm-proofed boat survived. This was the last Vinland expedition recorded in the saga. When we think of Vinland, it's easy to imagine a single mystical place where the Norse explorers first set foot in the New World. But geographically, the term Vinland can be more broadly applied to various regions across Atlantic Canada. The sagas sometimes distinguish Vinland from other territories like Helluland and Markland, which are also believed to be part of North America beyond Greenland. Interestingly, some sagas even hint at a mysterious connection between Vinland and a place known as Vitramannaland, a land shrouded in even more mystery. There's another fascinating theory. What if Vinland isn't just one specific location, but rather any place where the elusive grapes or perhaps wild berries could be found? In this interpretation, Vinland isn't just a name on a map, but a common term that could apply to any fruitful land. The Old Norse and Icelandic languages were remarkably flexible, able to create compound words that captured the essence of a place, and Vinland might just be one of these terms. Yet, the question lingers, was Lance o' Meadows truly the Vinland of the sagas? Eric Wahlgren, in his book The Vikings in America, argues that it wasn't. According to the sagas, Vinland was a place where salmon swam freely in the rivers, and vinber, which Wahlgren interprets as grapes, known to the explorers, grew wild. By charting the natural habitats of wild grapes and salmon, as well as the nautical clues from the sagas, Wahlgren proposes a location much further south, in Maine or New Brunswick. He speculates that Leif Eriksson may have camped at Passamaquoddy Bay, and that his brother Thorvald met his tragic end in the Bay of Fundy. As we draw the curtain on our exploration of Vinland, we're left with a tantalizing blend of history, myth, and mystery. The sagas paint a vivid picture of a land filled with promise, where Norse explorers ventured bravely into the unknown, driven by curiosity and a relentless spirit of adventure. Whether Vinland was a single fabled place or a series of fruitful lands scattered across Atlantic Canada, it stands as a symbol of the boundless human desire to explore and to discover. As we piece together the fragments of these ancient sagas, we continue to search for answers, driven by the same curiosity that led Leif Eriksson and his fellow explorers to the shores of the New World over 1,000 years ago. So, as we leave behind the windswept coasts of Vinland and return to the present day, let us carry with us the lessons of the past, the courage to explore the unknown, the wisdom to learn from our journeys, and the humility to recognize that some mysteries are meant to endure, sparking the imaginations of generations to come. Thank you for joining me on this voyage through history. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales from the annals of time. Until our next adventure, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the spirit of discovery alive.